We alive right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
At least pride-wise, made me feel good because you don't ever want to get swept.
And I've never done this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
If you ask me, can the Bucks win Game 5? I'd put it at
100%
confidence. Yes.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
At this point, we don't know what's going to happen. You can get Game 6. You can steal it.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Winning Game 6 and 7?
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
I don't think they're going to win the whole series, but
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Live from Caesar's Palace, it's Kyle. I am doing this because A, I am drinking on company time, and B, the Bucks somehow, some way are not dead yet. And look, all I'm saying is they got Game 5. You know, you go into Game 6, you get a little confidence. You might get Giannis and Dame back. Who knows? You get Game 6, you steal that, and then what happens after that? You go into Game 7 at home in Milwaukee, win that series, face New York, everyone's healthy, everything's clicking. Doc Rivers might redeem himself. You know, maybe this is a sign. Doc Rivers was always getting screwed over by a 3-1 lead. That this time he wanted his team to be down 3-1 and he could make the comeback. So maybe he reverse cursed himself. I don't know. It's pretty impressive, but belt to ass. Thank you, Bobby, for redeeming yourself. Chris, great work. I am kind of cackling right now, and yeah, so Bucks and 7, I guess. Bye.
Hello and welcome to Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the Stafford Brew Hoop, but most importantly, presented by Kyle Carr, live from the floor in Caesar's Palace. He was not watching the game, but he did. We flashed the bat signal. We said, Kyle, we need your reporting. We need your take on the game that you didn't witness at all from Vegas. And he was kind enough to send us reports from Sin City. So thanks, Kyle, for your reporting. We look forward to having you back to analyze the series whenever you do return. I am happy to be joined by Adam Paris this evening. Adam doing also great work with the intro, reworking it in honor of the Game 5 victory from the Milwaukee Bucks, a 115-92 drubbing of the Pacers. Adam, we're going to jump right into it. It's Wednesday morning your time. This is a late night game. Thanks a lot, Adam Silver. Let's just start. I'm going to clear out for you because tonight, I think in many ways, this was the Adam Paris game, right? So Chris Middleton, Pat Connaughton, Brook Lopez, Danilo Gallinari, objectively the 4 Bucks you would most want to go to war with. And they all had like the best games of their lives. So I'm just going to let you start wherever you like with those guys.
Yeah, the Gallo, I was really tempted to say Vetman confirmed starting on July 1 or whenever the free agency starts. No, I mean, the interesting thing, the name you didn't include there obviously was Bobby Portis. And I would say he has had an incredibly rough series. Insofar as I thought when he got kicked out of the last game, I thought we actually had a better chance of winning, and he showed up big time tonight. But to the players that you mentioned, big game from. I thought Brook Lopez didn't have to carry the load as much. I thought he did a decent job defensively, not having to do I think the big story of this game is not doing quite as much drop coverage, doing a lot more scram switching. I thought he was great. Chris Middleton carrying the load. Pat Connaughton finally looking like he had some semblance of offensive skill, which was nice to see. That's been kind of missing, I would say, all series. He looked a lot more kind of like the Pat Connaughton we're used to, getting on the glass, cutting, taking advantage of open opportunities. To me, though, like you said, those I would say at least the 3 war horses. I Gallo's fine. I don't need to see him again. But I did think, as it's past midnight my time, whether they won or lost, I was like, I think I need to stay up and watch this game in tribute to Pat Connaughton, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton. Because who knows? It could be probably not Chris, but it could be the last game for Brook and Pat. And I felt I owed it to them to stay up no matter what. And goddamn, Riley, it's so much nicer to win in the playoffs than it is to lose. I feel richly rewarded for having stayed up.
I know that you had your shrine going. I know you got the votive candles lit up in honor of the guys. One last ride. If this is going to be it, then let's go out in a blaze of glory. And they did. So tactically, you're right. The big thing is the switching. It was very funny. It was like, we've had so many questions of how do you play, like, what are your options with Brook Lopez when he's the center on defense? And it's like, okay, zone drop, obviously. And then Doc Rivers is like, okay, but what if we just switched everything? And Brook was like a key component in that. And you messaged me, I believe it was in the third quarter. You said, yeah, like in honor of Brook closing out on that. He closed out on like 9 different guards in a 10-second period.
It was like shades of the DJ Wilson against the Miami Heat.
DJ Wilson's career high, like the greatest moment in his life. Brook Lopez replicated it tonight against the Pacers. So he held his own. And I think it was like a choice from the Bucks to say, look, they've tried to pick their poison a couple of different times of, okay, Pascal Siakam, let's see if he'll kill us. Okay, he kind of did. All right, let's see if we can get Halliburton. And that worked really well in game 3 up until the very end. Game 4, I mean, they hung tight for a bit, but then they just kind of ran out of steam eventually. Bobby got ejected in that one. We didn't do an instant reaction in game 4 because that was just kind of a meh game. And then tonight it felt like, okay, well, you can't keep Brook following Miles Turner everywhere. That's not going to be necessarily the fix. So there was a lot of opportunities where like Malik Beasley, who gets the start tonight, ends up like fronting Miles Turner in the paint, and he does like a good enough job, or at least everybody else does a good enough job closing out the passing lanes and making sure there's not an easy way to get the ball in. So, I'll be curious what the Pacers do in game 6 on Thursday, but yes, that's the main through line is like defensively, they didn't try to have it like, okay, have a guy just beat us, try and just stick with Halliburton off the pick and roll. Like you said, scram switching and living with mismatches that so long as the guy can kind of hang in there for a minute, everybody else closes out. Great energy. That was the main thing is like, can you get enough energy out of these guys? They fought really hard. Like Chris Middleton has been having yet again another series of his life trying to hard carry us across the line. It's just a shame, especially game 3 where we weren't able to get there, but he was masterful in that. He obviously had a great night this evening, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists for him. And we'll see where it goes on Thursday. Let's go to Bobby Portis. You're right. Doc Rivers, excellent ball knowledge from Doc. He said, what if Bobby went out there and shot 14 of 24 with only 1 of 3 from 3 for 29 points, 10 rebounds. He was plus 30 on the evening for Bobby Portis, which is astounding. He makes shots. He's good. And here's the thing with Bobby and Malik Beasley. I'll give both of these guys a shot because they're typically defensive liabilities. They were critical in making the switching scheme work. There were very few opportunities or moments where I was like, oh, they really blew that. There's maybe one where Malik kind of got lost in the mid-range. Like, okay, he didn't know he had to back off and assign the guy who was in the paint. But outside of that, there were many lapses from either of those guys. And if you're not having 2 anchors on defense, that helps a lot, especially because those 2 guys are all offense. So if you get even a semblance of a little bit of defense, and this is the same in game 1 as well for Malik, where he wasn't excellent offensively, but he hung in there enough defensively. It was like, okay, maybe you can actually get it to work. Same thing tonight. So, the defense feeds into the offense. The Pacers shot really poorly from 3. They were getting a lot of good shots in the first quarter and second quarter. Then it kind of dried up. They go only 12 of 38 from 3. So total team effort. But yes, a couple of guys that I had left for dead for the most part came up big, especially in Malik and Bobby in particular.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby, obviously we knew he needed it. He owed us this game. He was
Yes,
really
he
bad.
did.
He was really bad this whole series until this point. And defensively, he seemed fine enough, right? And he was hitting big shots, playing within himself, taking advantage of mismatches, taking Siakam on the block or whoever else he wanted. But I think the Beasley thing is huge because he's clearly a player that just needs a little bit of confidence, right? He's been streaky all year. He goes in spurts where he shoots really poorly and then really well. He had some minutes earlier in this series that I thought were some of the worst minutes by anyone on the Bucks. So it was really interesting to see him come out and get some steals defensively, he sort of played like the Beasley that we like when we got really good starting Beasley all year, like the Beasley that we were like, well, I know we probably want someone else in the starting lineup, but like this guy's getting some steals. He's playing hard defensively. He's hitting threes when you need it. Like he was really big in the second half after Pat Bev held them up a little bit in the first half. So if they were going to win this series, they needed to have their role players show up in the same way the Pacers had their role players show up for a ton of time. So I thought just really critical from Beasley. I'm curious what you thought about why the defensive strategy seemed so executed so much better tonight. Like, was the communication just that much easier when you're doing all the switching or what? Because I did think I think they shifted to it a little bit more in like the second quarter. First quarter, I was like, this is more of the same. This is truly abysmal. I like don't really understand how they are leaving so many shooters wide open. And then you saw the Pacers. Obviously, some of it was like mean regression, but some of it was, I thought, playing a lot better. But I think their defense by far, I've been kind of baffled by this series about how poor it was. I think there was a stat that like the Pacers had 30 plus assists in 3 straight playoff games, which was like the first time since the 1990 Spurs. So, and I think Greg Anthony dropped it. They looked like the Golden State Warriors out there. Like, I just didn't really understand how the Bucks could be playing that bad of defense, even missing Giannis. Like, yes, that means maybe they can get into the paint, but I just thought the defensive rotations this whole series have looked nothing like some of the stuff we saw when Doc came in and the team seemed to understand what they were doing. So I just thought through the last 3 quarters tonight, the team just looked so much more locked in. Like they knew where to go. There weren't nearly as many miscommunications. And I liked moving a little bit away from the drop because I think it was just too easy for the guards to get downhill. One pass, easy bucket for the Pacers. And so I liked disrupting whatever's kind of flow they had in the first quarter and through most of this series.
Yeah, either one pass or they get around wherever the pick is. Their man defender is like too far back, and then Brook is stuck in no man's land. So it's like, okay, well, I can take like the mid-ranger or floater relatively uncontested. So everything from the perimeter defense, it hung up in game 1, and then from there it kind of collapsed, and that was kind of all she wrote. And the Pacers were able to figure out whatever the action they needed to keep spamming essentially. And like you said, they were doing it in the first quarter as well. Why it works so well? I mean, when you think about it conceptually, right? Like, of course, trying to get Brook Lopez to function as switching defense is kind of a big ask, but at the same time, Miles Turner is not super quick or anything. Like he's a good player, but he's not like, okay, gonna really burn you for like if Brook is far away or whatever. Like he's not gonna burn you on that. It was mostly corner threes that he was killing us, especially in game 4. So you can kind of finagle it with Brook, and then it also eliminates areas where Bobby is asked, for example, to like, okay, you just kind of have to corral whoever the ball handler is in the previous games. And that switch isn't going to be, you're not going to do the full switch there. You're just kind of stopping them so that the guard can get back to kind of get in front of Halliburton. And Bobby's just not good at reading those situations. He never has been. So when you're like, you switch it over, it's like, okay, Bobby, you just have to like deal with this, whoever this guy is. That's just who your assignment is now.
Right.
It just simplifies things, I think. And if you make it more simple, I think it allows guys to throw more energy into it. And Bobby and Malik are not going to be able to like out scheme the other team. You're not going to be out like defensively. You're not going to beat them with that. So just have them use their energy. Like say, hey, Malik, this is also probably your last game as a Buck. Can you just like go all out? Like nothing easy. You have 6 fouls, like steals, like you said, playing the passing lanes. He did a whole bunch. Like this is the only way we're going to get through. And that's going to be to make it super ugly before you let the Pacers kind of dictate the pace. Like it was a grudge match between the two, and the Pacers, when things are flat in terms of who's going to own the pace, like the way that the rosters are built or who's available, the Pacers are probably just going to be able to make it work in their favor. So kind of what I was advocating after game 2 is like, just make it really ugly. And even before this, we're not going to out finesse any of these teams. So throw bunches at them, like make it a huge pain in the ass to get past Bobby Portis. Like he's not perfect. He's not going to shut a guy down per se, but the Pacers got so used to not really just driving right at the rim uncontested, but like, okay, get to that spot on the elbow, now I can kind of do my little move from Pascal Siakam, and then, like I said, pass. Like, just make it a lot harder for them to have any sort of penetration at all. So worked really well in this game. How much it holds up in Game 6, we're going to see. But I think another great adjustment from Doc, who's playing with a pretty tough hand, cards in his hands, and he's making something work here, which is helped out by guys making shots. But good switch in terms of defensive philosophy. Curious what the Pacers do about it in Game 6, or if we return to our base defense and say, okay, it's not working, let's go back to that again and see how it goes from there.
The other guy, I mean, the other story was the absence of some of the players we had seen so far this series, right? Like, we didn't get much Andre Jackson Jr., we didn't get much AJ Green. Got a lot of Gallo.
No Jay Crowder, and
no Jay Crowder.
Bucks are officially 1-0 without Jay Crowder in this series. So Doc's cooking. Let Doc cook.
I know, it's almost too bad that Kyle wasn't here to go in on that. But I mean, I think that's notable, right? Like, no Jay Crowder. They pushed a lot of their players to the brink. They just put basically. I mean, Gallo played 21 minutes, right? That's a lot of minutes for him. But Patrick Beverley, I do think. I don't think they'll really get the shot in the arm offensively, maybe again from him. But I do think just like one of the things we haven't been able to get enough of this series from the Bucks, with them missing Dame and missing Giannis, is being able to attack Tyrese Halliburton. And I did think that I liked Patrick Beverley at least going at him, trying to drive on him, even if he got some buckets to fall tonight, which was great. But even if he's not doing that, it's like at minimum making Halliburton work. He's got a bad back. Sometimes opening up, probably like one of the other Pacers are going to want to help on that, which they probably shouldn't. But instinctively, I think they're going to want to help, knowing that someone's driving on Halliburton and Pat Bev is getting close. And I thought Beverley, he had 12 assists tonight. I mean, I thought he did a really good job as like basically the only person who could handle the ball outside of Middleton and do much stuff. So I thought he did a good job getting the Bucks into their actions, keeping up some intensity on the defensive side of the court, and like holding up a little bit of offensive fluidity because there really wasn't much else there unless Middleton was doing something. Maybe Pat was like driving, but otherwise the offense was basically like get the ball to Middleton on the elbow, get it to Bobby Portis on the elbow, or Pat Beverley kind of trying to run a pick and doing something. So I thought he was massive tonight for getting the Bucks across the finish line.
And you have to take advantage too, because I think it's not that the Pacers are all of a sudden going to have like fall completely off the cliff, but they've had to run full court defense for now 5 games in a row. And they have youth. They can make that sustain a lot more than a lot of other teams can, but that's going to wear you down eventually. And so we noted previously, they don't pressure Pat Bev as much. Like they'll pick their spots where they try to pressure him out full court. But if he's the one bringing the ball up the court, they're usually not on top of him. Same with Pat Connaughton. So I'm curious, like, can you continue to exploit that? Because part of the trouble that the Bucks have had is, okay, Dame gets the ball, he's bringing it up the court, he's getting hounded by 1 to 2 defenders the entire game, and that just throws off the flow of the whole offense. So yes, like by dint of not pressuring Pat Bev, it makes it easier for the Bucks to set up their offense, but it's also a bit of a poison pill for the Pacers to pick. It's like, okay, well, do we still invest in this against like this guy to send that same exact pressure? Like I think, is it Nembhard? He was guarding Middleton a little bit. He got the Pat Bev a little bit, like Naismith. And those are just like kind of tough assignments over the course of a series. So that's something else to keep an eye on. It's like, do the Pacers kind of start gassing here soon? I mean, Carlisle's gone to a pretty short rotation for a number of, like, ever since game 1 where he tried the Jalen Smith experiment, he's kind of run with like a 7 to 8 man rotation for the most part. Something to also keep an eye on. But yes, Pat Bev, great game from him. I think now the balance is, what's the status of Giannis and Dame?
That's what makes it hard to do the analysis, right? It's like to even take away from this, it's like the whole focus of the series could tilt completely if somehow Giannis or Dame come back. I would say especially Giannis. If Giannis comes back, it's like everything really kind of changes.
It kind of resets everything. And yes, it's literally do or die on Thursday, but it does reset like the entire situation of the series. It's like, okay, here's like the greatest outlier variable that you could introduce into the way things are going. And there's no way for us to account for that. There's no way for the only people who have any clue is Giannis, the coaching staff, and the medical staff of how close he is. What was Doc's quotes? He was like, I think the quotes that we're getting through Eric Name primarily is like Giannis is doing harder workouts, but it's not clear if he's like in full contact drills yet or whatever. And I think Dame just didn't even do anything in practice today, which is fine. Like, I think they had a feeling he was just not going to go. So that's just the question. Is like, the team has been super gritty to get as far as they have, to have made this as much of a series as they have. It's a real shame they didn't get game 3, but they've staved off defeat tonight. That's just like, how can they can maybe do it again in game 6. Like, the formula is there. It's a hard formula to make happen because Bobby is he's very inconsistent, but that's just the tough part. So I'm not even going to really ask you for a prediction. Is there anything you would like to see in game 6? And what's your, besides your 4 favorite Bucks of all time, having another great game, of course.
I do. Obviously, I want to see Brook Lopez play really well. I think he probably has Riley Feldman like written in his locker or something like that for motivation. No, I think, you know what I want to see is I just want to see them play with the same intensity they played with tonight. I thought they played hard, like all that kind of stuff, whatever cliche you want to say. But I also thought when I'm watching defensively, it looks like the Pacers are sometimes playing a different game in terms of intensity, on ball, what the refs are letting them get away with, and what I don't think the Bucks are necessarily leaning into. And I think I'm not going to blame the refs, but I don't think the reffing has been like incredible, or like, I think if they've allowed the Pacers to get away with more, but I think that's in part because they're pushing the envelope more and they're constantly pressuring ball handlers and they're up really high on all of our offensive players and all that kind of stuff. So seeing the team have a little more opportunities for transition and taking advantage of them smartly and not like smoking layups all the time was great. And then also just on the glass, it was just so much better tonight, right? Like, they won the offensive rebounding battle tonight. I think for the first time since game 1, they had a 35.6% offensive rebound, which is like kind of what they had like during their title run. That's way better than what they had for any of the other ones. I thought second chance opportunities were big. So it was just like attacking the glass, wanting to get the 50-50 balls, like some of those kind of things just that I felt like the Pacers were doing, in bunches throughout all of these games. This felt like the first game where it was like, okay, now we're all trying. We're all rowing in the same direction. We're actually rotating out to shooters. We're not just leaving people wide open. I was looking at the points per possession in this series. Like, the last 3 were just so bad. 132.6 in the last one, 124.7, 140.2 in game 2. This one was at 104. So just, I want to see the same level of effort defensively and on the boards. And frankly, I think if they're able to do that and the Pacers don't have like some sort of outlier 3-point shooting game, I think they can stick with them, because I think Halliburton's back is hurting. I think Siakam's tiring out a little bit, and they've done a much better job on him, even though he still, I think, is, and he's not hitting anything at the free throw line right now, even when he's grifting. So I think starts with the defense. I think that's why they won this game. I think was the biggest issue that's been throughout the whole series. Defense and rebounding. If they keep that same level, even without Giannis, they have a puncher's chance on Thursday.
They've done a lot better of a job of positioning Chris and Bobby in particular around Brook to fill the Giannis position, to corral all those. That's why those guys are consistently getting double-doubles every time they're on the floor, just by dint of being ready there for all the defensive rebounds. Agree across the board. And they're making Siakam work on defense too. Like, he's having to expend a ton of energy on both sides. And that's where Bobby is like such a great weapon to have, because yes, his ISO on the elbow or in the mid-range or on baseline can be aggravating to watch. But if he's really like throwing a shoulder into a dude's chest all game long, like that has to get tiring eventually. And usually Siakam amongst the starters is the guy who gets the call there. And I think that's also helping drain. So we're really trying to spin forward a lot of like, yes, this was a great game. Like, no doubt, great game. Really happy with all the effort and everything. everything kind of it's all up in the air. There's been a couple of times where the Pacers have been wobbly. I'm making no predictions at all for Game 6 whatsoever. I'm just heartened to see that the role players came alive for at least one game, because there's only so far Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez can carry you. Like, they tried everything they could and gave for, and nobody else really was there to help carry the load. And they were there tonight, and that's going to be what they're going to need in Game 6, presuming that Giannis and Dame are out as well. Two final favorite moments. One, Malik Beasley going at Tyrese Halliburton, getting the and one, and then flexing really hard on Halliburton. Just desserts and extremely appreciated. That was easily Malik's top moment as a Buck. I'm not sure if it can get any better than that, but I'm glad that he rose to the occasion too. I like, and this is when you know you're a Milwaukee icon, they don't even refer to Pat Connaughton as Pat Connaughton, the scorers table guy, the in-arena announcer guy, when he's checking in, checking out. Pat Connaughton checked out at the end of the game when he took a well-deserved rest, and he's just, and it's like checking in for PC. It's like, man, that's legendary status. So shout out to you, PC. If I was a fan who, like a newer Bucks fan, I'd be like, who the hell is PC? And I'd be looking at the program looking for the player named PC. But shout out to legend Pat Connaughton. Made some shots. The number of donuts we've gotten from that guy so far this series. Playoff Pat lives one last time. So
he's getting his numbers retired. He's getting his numbers retired up there with Brooke.
Right.
My
last, near the end here.
My last thing, it's really late for me. My last thing I wanted to ask was just sort of like your feeling about how much you despise the Pacers versus want to allow them to enjoy some sort of appreciation for what they're doing. I have found myself now at the level, which I don't like to find at, where I'm like standing up in the middle of the game and yelling, F you, Indiana, as everyone else in my house sleeps. So I don't think that's like a healthy level I wanted to be at, but I'm curious where you are after sort of seeing the Pacers really do the sort of representation of what the Beasley flex was to the umpteenth degree the last few games.
I'm trying to do what Bobby and Malik are incapable of doing and not front running before, like essentially putting the cart before the horse. So if the funniest thing of all time happens, I'm not even going to say it out loud, but if the funniest thing of all time happens, obviously I will be crushing them. Up until that point, I'm trying to maintain they're young. I remember when our team was young and stupid too. They're like extra young and stupid and like really brazen about it. So I'm trying to accept it, but again, if the funniest thing of all time happens, I will crush them. So, but I understand why if people are upset, and you know what, it carries up from regular season, and it's good to really hate your division rivals, even though divisions don't matter in the current NBA. So if it's like, I hate the Pistons and the Bulls and the Pacers or whoever, or the Cavs, I guess, mostly the Bulls and the Pacers, that's perfectly fine by me and probably good for the health of basketball in general. So,
okay, great. That's all I had.
Beautiful. All right. Game 4. My God. Game 6 on Thursday. I was thinking the fourth day of the week. I went crazy there. It's really late, folks. We'll be back with another instant reaction podcast. I think it's going to be an earlier start time. If Kyle is, I'm not sure how long he's in Vegas. We'll look to get more reporting from Kyle. But Bucks stave off, defeat, Bucks win, Bucks win, Bucks win. 3-2 heading to Indiana. We will be back on Thursday with an instant reaction to Game 6. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.